Слава Україні!
Hello everyone, my name is Paul. Welcome back to the new news. I hope that everyone's having a fantastic day. I hope that you've had a wonderful Monday. I know it's a little weird considering our previous schedule, but we will be doing Monday streams from now on. As some of you may already know, and as I had talked about a little bit last night, we are changing up our format when it comes to how we kind of do the news here to give us some more time for some other content that you guys have been requesting quite extensively. You know, shorter video formats, a lot of shorts, that kind of stuff. And of course, the thing is, because this is all charity driven, most of us work full time. That way we don't have to worry about revenue or anything off of the streams. And so what we're trying to do here is we're trying to free up some of that time, and most importantly, give us a mental break. As I'm sure you can probably guess, a lot of this can be a little bit mentally taxing on you to kind of look at some of the really dark and depressing stuff that we do every day. So I hope that you guys are going to enjoy this new format. We will be live at our normal time at 10 p.m. Eastern Time at 9 p.m. Central every single Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And then for our normal stream. And then on Saturdays, because there's a little bit more of a time frame that we can work on there, we will be live at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. 5 p.m. Eastern Time, 4 p.m. Central Time on Saturdays. So that way our European viewers and those that live in Africa can also join us and participate in these new streams at a little bit more of a reasonable time for you. So thank you very much for bearing with us as we're kind of working through this. I hope that you guys are going to enjoy this new format. But all this stuff is so that way we can, one, provide more content for you guys, help us a little bit mentally, but also so that way we can work on these projects to raise more money in order to help with different organizations throughout the world. Because that's the whole point of this project. 100% of everything we do is going to be for charity. We're never doing any kind of super chats. We're never going to be monetizing this for any kind of money. We're never doing any of that. 100% of everything we do is to support the different humanitarian and a lot of NGOs throughout the world that are trying to help people in times of crises. And if you check out in the video description below, you're going to see an absolute ton of them. We're vetting some currently, even more than that have been actually submitted by you guys here in the community. So if you guys go and check those out, 80% or more of the donations that these organizations receive will actually go directly to the program, meaning it's going to help people, not necessarily going to pay for things like administration's costs and salaries and stuff that kind of makes some of these NGOs a little bit more controversial. So please, if you can, give as much support as they can, or as you can, to these organizations. If you can't give a lot, give a little. If you can't give anything at all, that's perfectly okay too. Help us grow this. The more people that actually come here, if you're enjoying the content and you're enjoying the work that we do, please give us a like and subscribe. Let your friends know about us. The more people that come here, the more of an impact we will have as a community, and that's really what this is about, is trying to put a little bit of good back into the world, considering all the bad that we report on every night. And our goal will always be to be the news that gives back. And with that, there's a ton of stuff going into the news tonight, as of course that is every single night that we're doing this. And a lot of it has to center around Ukraine. There's also been some big developments with Armenia and Azerbaijan as well, which we will get to when we get to the international news. But overall, just quite a few big developments. And yes, Xenocide says, what about the new Save Our Planet section? We will be doing a section for things such as climate change, as climate change has actually caused quite a significant number of the crises throughout the world. A lot of what we're currently looking at right now has actually been climate oriented, as well as some other things regarding like humane society kind of type stuff with helping animals and stuff and pets that had been left behind inside of Ukraine, and they're in some of these areas as well as in other locations throughout the world. We're looking to just help as much as we can in many areas, so please keep sending us more. If you have more organizations, please keep sending them to us on the Discord. We are trying to vet these as best as we can to make sure they're safe for you, and also so that way they meet our criteria of 80% or more. But as we get ready to move into the news here, a lot of this stuff is a little bit complicated. Generally speaking, these geopolitical situations can get rather complicated, and even in the military aspect, most people didn't serve the military. That's just kind of the general gist of it. So you're probably going to wonder why some of these guys are doing the things that they are doing. That's perfectly fine. Trust me, I thought it was all handy dandy until I actually went into the military, and then it started making sense. So I can give a little bit of a background on it. Please ask questions throughout the stream if you're joining here with us live. My field of expertise is I'm a subject matter expert in anti-armor warfare and armored doctrine. I was an O-352 anti-tank missileman inside of the United States Marine Corps between 2016 and 2020. In that time, I did 2 tours. My first tour, I served in Syria between 2017 and 2018 during the winter deployment and the fight against the Islamic State. And then on my second tour, I also went to Iraq, where I was in charge of anti-armor operations at the Baghdad Embassy complex during the Baghdad Embassy protests of 2020. And then I also went and I trained Saudi Arabian Marines going into Yemen. I also am very well versed in machine gunnery, as that is something I'm fully cross-trained in. Radio operations, as I was cross-trained in order to be a radio operator representative, because we only have 1 radio op and 2 sections in a platoon. And I am versed in several other aspects, but not as well. Things like calling air support and what have you, mortars, guns, that kind of stuff. But please ask questions. I'm pretty well versed in a lot of different topics, or at least try to be so. So I will answer them to the best of my ability, but in some cases I just may not know, in which case I'll just tell you, like, I have no idea. Because I'd much rather just kind of tell you the truth. But with anything I say, don't believe everything you hear on the internet, folks. I implore you, please do your own research onto any topic that you may find yourself interested in. But as we get ready to roll into the news here, we start off, of course, up here in Ukraine, and specifically in the areas of Kyiv, where we have a couple of different updates. Our first major update is the child casualty update. Once again, we're getting, quote, since the beginning of Russia's full-scale war against Ukraine, 383 Ukrainian children have died, 747 children have been injured. Most of the victims among children are from the Donetsk region. That's coming from the General Prosecutor's Office there in Ukraine. This is their chief area for talking about war crimes, deaths, civilian casualties, what have you. These are the ones that are going to release the numbers. The Donetsk region is seeing the most significant amount of the fighting. Even though a lot of the eyes have been on the Kharkiv region, the Donetsk region maintains being some of the hottest, most kinetic fighting of the duration of this war, and has been since the beginning of the invasion. And that fighting even goes back to 2014. However, it kind of stagnated and stalled for both sides there up until this recent invasion. There's also a lack of power across Ukraine. Quote, as of September the 12th, there is no electricity in 817 settlements across Ukraine due to Russian shelling. And that's coming from the Ministry of Energy of Ukraine. Russia did end up targeting civilian basic infrastructure, such as electrical power grids, water mains, that kind of stuff. They basically destroyed a large swath of them. Upwards of 90+% of the Kharkiv and Donetsk Oblasts are completely without power, running water, gas, or many of the other basic amenities to sustain life. And you have to remember that it is now September. It is rolling into mid-September. The weather is already starting to get cold. That nip of fall is in the air, and what we are starting to see is that it's going to be getting very cold very quickly here in Europe. As we move into the Kharkiv Oblast, of course, we have plenty of updates, and what we end up seeing is an update regarding yesterday. This is the Tech 5 power plant, which was shelled yesterday. And what we see is that the power plant, quote, rocket attacks on the thermal power plant in Kharkiv region on September the 11th. 2 people were killed, 2 citizens were injured. That's coming from Oleh Subinov, the head of the Kharkiv Regional Military Administration. Jesus. Very well. Someone would like to fist fight me in a Kroger's parking lot, apparently. Brother, I don't do that anymore. And considering what I've seen, man, you just don't want to do that. I really, you do not want to do that. Man, I've done things that make people sick. I don't think you want to do that. As we see. Anyway, quote, Russian aggressors shelled the Osnivsky and Kievsky districts in Kharkiv on September the 12th. 1 man was killed, 6 citizens were injured. 4 injured victims were hospitalized. That comes from Oleh Subinov, who's the head of the Kharkiv Regional Military Administration. So we are seeing extensive amounts of shellings in areas there in Kharkiv. Kharkiv is still under immense shelling, specifically from Belgorod. Belgorod is firing Iskander-M missiles as well as converted S-300, S-400 anti-air missile batteries. They were actually shelling. They converted some of these to hit surface targets. They're not very accurate, but they have been used before. We also seen them being used against Mykolaiv, coming out of the Kherson Oblast. But we're starting to see more and more of this as it appears that Russia continues to deplete it appears that they tend to deplete their reserves of actual ballistic missiles, purpose-built ballistic missiles, I should say. Kharkiv is no longer viable for them. The striking of Kharkiv is no longer viable for them because there's no hope of them. They do not have the troops and equipment and concentration, or as we have seen over the last few days, the morale to launch a major offensive in any way, shape, or form that would be able to take the city of Kharkiv. Kharkiv is no longer tactically viable. They can't even hit it with their basic conventional artillery systems, such as your 2S1s, 2S3s, such as your DPK-30s, your Grad systems. They can't use that. None of them within range, and so they have to hit it with ballistic missile strikes. As we continue, though, we do have some good and some bad news. And what we end up seeing is we're going to start off here in Balakliva, where we see quite an immense amount of kind of bad news. So the first thing is that evidence of torture has been found here in Balaklia. If you can also notice, so they found torture rooms, Russian torture rooms. It's very similar to what we are finding, or very similar to what was found in other long-time occupied regions, such as up in Bucha and Irpin and Hostomel. The atrocities of the Russians are starting to show their faces once again. We're finding torture rooms. We're finding bodies, quite extensive amounts of bodies, and it's hard to describe. It's hard to wrap your head around. The war is terrible enough, but the immense amount of just absolute war crimes and just this continues to reaffirm the stance that this is a genocide done poorly. Russian torture rooms. There's also starvation. Quote, "We are starving like dogs," residents described their life under Russian occupation. The locals told told the journalists that during their occupation they had no money to buy food. The hryvnia could not be exchanged for rubles and residents. Just look at the desperation as of the first humanitarian convoy which reached there today.
А можно и нам с ребенком? Сынок, где ты есть? Как барбаля. Це більш властиво для територій, які були під окупацією, коли люди нічого не бачили. Заздалегідь ми більшого пакуємо на кожну особу пакунки, але сьогодні не було часу, тому таке трошки сумбурне роздача.
Гроші ніде не поміняти, нічого, пенсію ніде не міняєш, і ми як собаки голодні. Ото хліба спечеш сам, тому що,
Тому що гроші наші на українській території. Угу. Тобто ви фактично м'ясо не їли, да, я так розумію?
Ні,
Їли м'ясо, росіяни кидали, давали.
Давали?
Росіяни давали гуманітарку.
А як це виглядало? Скільки багато давали?
Десь 2 рази в місяць давали. На одного чоловіка 2 банки тушонки за місяць. 2 банки консерви, 2 банки тушонки. Іноді 2 згущенки. Іноді, не завжди.
рис і гречка.
Люди буквально ще вчора були під окупацією. Вони тільки зараз почали якось по-новому.
So as you see, the rather desperation on these people's faces. But the first humanitarian convoys did actually reach Balakliva today. Earlier today, the Red Cross actually managed to get there with some 2,000 food and hygiene parcels for the local community.
Today, 12th of September, the ICRC has accessed Balaklia. It's the first time we managed to reach this remote location to assist the communities with 2,000 food parcels and hygienic parcels, which we hope will help them to make it through this transition period.
And that is coming officially from the International Committee of the Red Cross in Ukraine. Give it a hand to the mods, by the way, guys. They're awesome. And what we see here is a couple of different things. So we can take a look here. This is something called the Ark. Now, this is something that we've heard about kind of offhand. It's not really highly talked about. This is a Ukrainian-built armored mobile hospital, and it's a beast. Take a look at this thing. This is the Ark. Look at that thing. Wow. That's kind of terrifying to look at, not gonna lie. But that is a mobile hospital. You should use Nightbot. We will when we get to a point. Thank you, Delta. But yes, so that's a mobile hospital, and that's just huge. It's crazy. But at least they're getting good help there on the front. As we're sitting here, we see a ruse, and Ukrainian troops found a Russian decoy. It's not very good, but it's a Russian decoy nonetheless. Take a look at this. This is a Russian decoy that they built for whatever. I'm not quite sure what they're using this. It's not like it's like a convoy of vehicles or like a battery or something. It's just a random truck. Take a look.
Друга армія світу з кінця, блядь. Друга армія третього світу. Із гівна і паточок.
Wow. Damn. Yeah, not very good. I mean, this doesn't even have a body for it. It's not even a body. Like no one, and you can tell like nobody shot at this thing. Like this didn't fool anybody. It wouldn't fool anybody. We see Ukrainians using some nice new toys over here. These are Navistar Max Pro MRAPs, which are mine-resistant armored personnel carrier vehicles. And we're seeing these were donated by the United States. We're seeing them used rather heavily throughout the Kharkiv counteroffensive as it continues here. All this stuff having, of course, copyright music. But you can see them, they're rolling through here. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm seeing NATO weaponry on these guns. That does not look like Russian weaponry. It looks like M2s. Let's see if I can get a better view of this. Yeah, that's an M2. So that's a Browning 50 cal on top. That's an M2 HB Browning 50 cal, and you can tell because of the muzzle brake on it. And I'm going to guess and say this one's probably rocking the same thing. Yeah, looks like it. He's rocking it. He's rocking it, but he's got a barrel sleeve on for water protection. Which is fine. We're also seeing these markings. Now, I want to identify these markings for you here real quick. I've seen it said multiple times, oh, the Ukrainians truly are Nazis. They're putting the Iron Cross on something. This is not the Iron Cross, first of all. And also, the Iron Cross has been around much longer than the Nazis, okay? The Nazis just adopted the Iron Cross because it was Prussian. The Iron Cross is Prussian. It's not... It's coming from, like, Westphalia, not coming from, like, the Nazis. It just happened to be used by the Nazis. The Kaiser Reich also used it. The Kaiser was definitely not a Nazi. The Westphalia used it. Prussia used it. There's nothing more formidable in the Napoleonic era than Napoleon himself and Prussia. And so that's kind of what we're seeing here. Now, what we're not seeing is the Iron Cross. These are not Iron Crosses, okay? What these are is a very simple identification mechanism. It's not very hard to draw a plus sign. It's not very hard to draw a plus sign. It isn't. Anyone can do that. And as we've seen the Russians do it, they can't even draw Z's on sometimes correctly. They sometimes put them on backwards. I wish I was kidding on that. There are photos to prove it. But no, it's just a plus sign, and what it does is it easily identifies a vehicle as friend or foe. And then what it also does is, as you can see, these are being marked on the hood and everywhere else. And if you're seeing them on vehicles, you're seeing them right across the top of vehicles. This is so that aircraft, when they're overhead, can spot those vehicles and identify them as friendly. It's not the only way to do this. Air panels are heavily used. In fact, there is waterproof. If you ever join the military, usually one of the waterproofing bags you will get is actually orange on the inside. It's usually your assault pack one. It's orange on the inside, so that way you can flip it inside out, and it acts as an air panel because aircraft can see it and can identify you as a friendly, and anything that doesn't have an air panel on the back of it is probably foe. So it's a very easy just identification mechanism, friend or foe. Also, Russian trenches, we were learning, are not the most sanitary of places. Yeah, these guys definitely don't live. We'll get to how the Ukrainians live in a trench, but these are how the Russians live in a trench. Just take a look. This is from the Kharkiv Oblast.
Ще трошки інформації про побут російських військових. Це у них кухня. Бачите, ну, все нормально, кухня. Газова плитка. Це у них стіл. Тут вони хавали. А між столом і плиткою, ну ви зрозуміли, що це. Приближати не буду. Ще трошки інформації про...
Very nice. Very, very nice. It's good to see that the Russian bots are back out tonight. They've been rather quiet over the last couple of days. As we see here, in the last 24 hours, the armed forces of Ukraine liberated more than 20 settlements in the Kharkiv and Donetsk regions. And that's coming from the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Yes, Demise, that was Asswipe. As you jump down here to Izium, the kind of good or kind of interesting or kind of funny news kind of ends, though. Because once again, we go back to that original topic as we moved into the Kharkiv Oblast. Quote, since the beginning of Russia's full-scale war against Ukraine, Russian occupiers have killed more than 1,000 Ukrainian civilians in Izium in the Kharkiv region. That comes from Maxim Strelnik, the deputy of the Izium City Council. 1,000 Ukrainian civilians in Izium alone. 1,000 civilians in Izium alone. We saw the torture rooms in Balaklia. We see and we're hearing the deaths of civilians in Izium. We saw yesterday, where the bodies of 2 tortured and summarily executed men were already found in the Kharkiv region. Just like in the north, it starts slowly. It starts with 1s and 2s and rumors, and you hear about what it is. And then it happens all at once. As the fervor in occupied areas goes away, the reality is going to sink in. There are many people who are missing. There are many people who are missing, and nobody knows where they're at. There are many people who have been taken and tortured and executed. While we cannot say for sure, the likelihood is that over the next coming days and weeks, as a viewer, you should probably prepare yourself, for we are going to hear a lot more in these areas which were occupied for so long under Russia, of the immense amount of atrocities which were committed by the Russian Federation during their occupation. Delta Aviation has asked, where does all of the secret equipment Ukraine captures go to? Back into their troops. In fact, it's kind of funny. At this point, Ukraine has so many armored vehicles, they actually don't have the personnel to like, field them all. They captured so many armored vehicles, they just don't have the personnel to actually like field them all. Also, I apologize if you hear a bunch of like banging and pawing or whatever. The cat, I keep the door closed, and the cat is having a fantastic time trying to get into the room. So I apologize for that. I keep Tally locked out, so while I'm on the stream. As we continue down here and get into the Donetsk Oblast, what we end up seeing is down here in the Donetsk Oblast that we have a couple of different liberations today. Bohorodishny was liberated. Ukrainian forces have successfully liberated the village of Bohorodishny in the Donetsk Oblast, and that's coming from Pavlo Kulenko. Take a look. Sorry if you guys ended up watching that twice. I had to go let the cat in before she drove me insane. She'll probably start kicking herself in the face here shortly. Quote, so Delta Aviation is asking, will Putin's troops capture the Donbass by the 15th of September? No. 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 They won't. No, they will not. Pretty... Oh, geez, everyone likes the cat. They will not be capturing the Donbass. They will probably not... the Russian Federation has taken such a significant beating during this counteroffensive and during the last couple of weeks that I do not think, and this is my very humble opinion, keep in mind I'm not like a strategic expert or anything, I have never seen an army beaten so badly. I have not. The Islamic State put up a longer fight. They did. The Islamic State put up a longer, harder fight than the Russian army has against a tougher opponent, the Western coalition. Because, Ukraine is doing amazingly. They're getting a lot of support and they're learning quite a bit, but they're not the best military in the world. That's certainly not the truth. They don't have to be, though. They just have to be better than the Russians. And that's the thing. The reality is that the Russians are doing horribly, and they have taken such significant losses. I've never seen a rout quite like what we saw in Kharkiv. I do not think that Russia at this point has the forces to muster any meaningful offensive ever again in the war. I think we have reached past the point where the turning point of the war. I think HIMARS, I think the time when Ukraine hit HIMARS and for about a week just bombarded Russian ammunition depots continuously. It was what we're reporting, like 6 of them a night for like a week and a half straight. That is the turning point in the war. I 100% think that is. I think if we look back when the war is over and you take a look at everything, that is the turning point of the war. Is Ukraine gets these HIMARS and immediately, effectively starts laying down hate and discontent on ammunition depots, logistical, command, communications, and control structures. Because at that point, Russia can't use its artillery. It negates its numerical advantage in artillery. You can have a lot of artillery guns, but if they can't sustain fire to keep suppression on your target, on your enemy, so they can't move, it doesn't matter. If they don't have the ammunition to sustain that fire, then it doesn't matter if you have 10 artillery guns if only 3 of them can continue firing. Right? That's really, I think, the turning point in the war. Because that really allows Ukraine to really maneuver its forces and really restructure the lines. They can probe the Russian lines a lot better because they have a lot more freedom of movement there on the front lines. I think another big help there is the amount of equipment that they started getting in regards to replacement parts for their aircraft so their Air Force can get to work. And using these precision missiles to really trap a lot of forces. Because, and something that pointed out to me today, I think is pretty important to note too, and I think it's very true, is Ukraine really pushed the fact that they were going to do a counteroffensive and retake Kherson. And it makes sense that they would. I believe that they would retake Kherson. I would have thought, I'm sitting here looking at a map, and I've said it before, if you just take the Kherson Oblast, you don't have to take the whole part. You just have to take it up to the Dnipro River and then blow the bridges across the river, and then you can station a minimum amount of troops in the Kherson Oblast because you're just, swiping at, these small attempted pontoon crossings. There's no other major way into the Kherson Oblast, as long as you just block it with the Dnipro River and say, well, after the war's over, we'll just have to rebuild the bridge. I mean, cut your losses. Do you want to worry about the infrastructure now or later? Well, I'd much rather worry about it later once the war is done. So one hell of a miss. I don't think it's a complete misinformation campaign because there has been quite significant gains in the Kherson Oblast. But the Russians sent so many troops. Just so many troops to the Kherson Oblast. They completely rerouted entire battalion tactical groups to go reinforce the entirety of the Kherson Oblast, layer after layer after layer, and then Ukraine blew the bridges so they couldn't escape, trapping them there, and then they immediately hit them on their eastern flank and have completely routed them. It's amazing. It's like Operation Overlord, like level of deception tactics. You know, is the invasion force of Normandy going to land at Calais? No, they're going to land in Normandy, and you're going to think they're in Calais to the point you don't pull your reserves in. And the Russians really don't have any, because the 10,000 troops they need are stuck in the Kherson Oblast. And there's no way out. They're trapped there. They're trapped there until they either are killed off or they surrender. Or they die trying to escape as they drown trying to cross the Dnipro River. That's really the reality here is what's left. Russia's already suffering from a manpower shortage. They're already suffering from logistical communication, logistical problems, communication, command and control issues, very localized command and control, very small tactics, under-equipped, undersupplied, low morale, high casualty rates, terrible tactics that just are not working, and they aren't changing them. And it's really working to their detriment. At this point, after this rout in the Kharkiv Oblast, because eventually the troops in the Kherson area are going to have to either die or give up. That is the reality. It's just a matter of when that's going to happen. There is no great rebuilding, hurriedly rebuilding the Antonovsky Bridge. It's done for. Novokakhovka has collapsed into the Dnipro River. That bridge is done for. There is no resupplying your troops in any major way north of the Dnipro River. And so you're just looking at this point, waiting. It's a game of waiting out, and the Ukrainians using that time that they have to really, that momentum that they have to really just kind of sweep the flank of the Russian Federation, and in some ways maybe even cut them off from resupply if you go ahead and sweep into the north. Delta Aviation's asking, how important was Izium to the Russians? Izium is extremely important. Everyone, it takes a little bit to take a look at the map to kind of tell you. Izium kind of lies within this area that's kind of a good, advantageous position. Izium is a major city. It's a good hub, right? There are, I believe, rail hubs that run through Izium. Yeah, you can see there's rail hubs that run through Izium. So it's perfect for logistical supply trains, and you can pull them up all the way through Russia. And you can also, it's a great connecting point between the Donetsk and the Luhansk Oblasts and the Kharkiv Oblast. Izium is kind of like an anchor point in their offensive. And you see this at the beginning of the Donbass campaign, where they push out of Izium after they've captured it. The Donbass campaign begins. They have just captured Izium not but a couple weeks beforehand. They do a push out of the Izium area, and they basically push out, and you see a huge amount of fighting ongoing in these areas. Dovhink and Brazikivka, in these areas over here. But really, they don't take their first day objectives. And you see them really stall out, and you see really heavy, bitter fighting in a stalled front there in Izium. And then the Russians really don't have another opportunity to push. They take so high of casualties, it's reported that the Russians of all people, notorious for just continuing to thrust troops into the fight, not really rotating them, rotated those troops out of the contact zone, out of that kinetic fighting, and rotated fresh ones in. This area is an anchor point. It's an anchor point onto their flank. It's a connecting area. It's a railhead. It's a perfect supply point. And this also allows them that if need be, saying coming out of Lyman, they weren't able to take Slavyansk, they could actually try to flank Slavyansk and conduct the encirclement here instead. That's kind of what you're seeing. It puts pressure onto the rear echelons of the Donetsk Oblast, and it gives the wider front for them to have to deal with multiple pressure points as opposed to dealing with just what's in front of them. That's the danger that it puts Ukraine in, and that's really the danger that Ukraine has completely swiped off the face of the earth right there. That's why taking the Kharkiv Oblast is so important. You're taking off the flank. Now, in the Donbass, you don't have to worry about what's to the side of you. Right now, there's a little bit of chunk of land here that is going to have to be worried about, but that's all going to be in due time. That momentum's still going. Those troops are still on the move. They haven't slowed down. They have gotten up to 3,000 square kilometers, and they are going to be continuing. And that seems to be the feeling. It's a question of kind of give or take, and this is something I was talking about a little bit before the stream with one of the researchers. It's really a risk versus reward. Do you continue and risk putting your supply line, stretching things too thin, and making it too weak against a counterattack, or do you keep the momentum going? Because once you lose that momentum, it's very difficult to regain combat momentum once again. And that's really the risk versus reward game that's being played right now, as this is some of the fastest offensive that I have ever seen. Usually troops will move at about 20 square kilometers in a good day in a combat situation. They captured 3,000 square kilometers in a day. So it's quite an astounding feat militarily, and it's doing quite a few things. But yes, Izium is extremely important. Taking that has completely alleviated, or has mostly alleviated, the risk to the rear and to the flanks of Ukrainian defenses there within the Donbass, and now they really just have to worry about what's directly in front of them. They're not going to have to worry about their flank collapsing because of an offensive coming from their northeast. And once again, as I was saying, as we're down here near Boyachin, we actually crossed the Siversky Donetsk River. We're over here. Yes, Ukraine in total has captured 3,000 square kilometers worth of territory over the last week. They have liberated more territory than Russia had captured since April. And what we're seeing here is that Ukrainian forces also captured went across the Siversky Donetsk River and pushed into Svyatirsk, which we actually have good confirmation they have liberated that successfully. And this is coming from the administration building here in Svyatirsk, showing that they have indeed liberated that. Usually, once they put the Ukrainian flag over the administrative building, it's been liberated. And as you can see, a nice little picture there. I love his little RPD there, with the chapel in the background. Xenocide asks, what happens if they take Luhansk and Donetsk? Well, that's the real fight. Now, Luhansk is not. It's not as. They're tactically significant, but the whole point, Russia's main point, is to, liberate the Donbass and to have two major groups, to have those two independent countries in this region. The Luhansk People's Republics and the Donetsk People's Republics, which are self-declared republics and breakaway regions inside of Ukraine. They're Russian-backed. They're mostly Russian. Basically, the separatists are mostly just Russian forces that went from Russia into Ukraine and started fighting for these groups, because simply they didn't have the manpower to do it themselves. And I'm sure Russia's paying a pretty penny over to the Wagner group, and Putin chef's probably paying some too out of pocket, considering he's an oligarch, to keep that war effort funded. And if you lose Luhansk and you lose Donetsk, then you're not really, there's no rhetoric you can have to fight the war anymore. You lost the war if you lose your the two major objectives that you have claimed the entirety of the duration of the war, and you lose them, it's over. It's game. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing here. You have that major route there in the northeast, up in the Kharkiv Oblast. And then we'll talk a little bit about this later, but you're seeing trouble in Kherson as things the cracks are really starting to form there. And really, if what is supposedly as many troops as they are claiming are Russian troops inside of the Kherson Oblast, if they end up surrendering, that's for the most part ball game. You pretty much completely have folded the Russian flanks, and it seems to be quite impressive just how quickly that has developed. But really, the amount of troop losses and what really gets me is the amount of Russian troops captured is so extensive that it's kind of gobsmacking. It's really hard to describe just how effective that has been. And those aren't troops that can be rotated back after, into the forces. They're captured. It's an immense amount of troops that have surrendered. It's thousands of Russian troops reportedly having surrendered. And you cannot come back when you're already having manpower issues, as the Russians are. You just cannot come back from a major defeat like that. So yeah, losing Luhansk and Donetsk is something that is actually, you could reason it's possible that could be coming here, maybe not in the immediate week or 2 weeks, but you could be talking, depending on how bad, how much momentum is maintained and how much Russian morale has really completely broken down force-wide. And we don't really see the Russians reacting to this outside of withdrawal. We don't see them really reacting and setting up any new defensive positions anywhere. So it seems like other areas are operating as normal. So it really begs into question, how much can the Russians really take now? And it seems that they may be completely at their breaking point, and if there aren't there now, it's going to be here very shortly. We're starting to hear that it grown underneath the immense pressure, and it's just not. I don't know how much more it can withstand. I don't think the Russians can withstand much more of this at all. So, yeah, Ukraine arrests the Russian infiltrators in the Luhansk and Donetsk governments and put them in prison. Then what? Push into Crimea? Yes, they will push into Crimea. They have clearly stated they will be liberating the hell out of Crimea. Yes, they will also probably imprison everyone involved in the government in any way, shape, or form in the Luhansk and the Donetsk regions. And in fact, Russia, I think, is expecting that to happen, because they have closed their borders to those collaborators that are fleeing. We do know that they have done that. Minus Pinchlin, who is the head of the Donetsk People's Republics, but he can claim it's a diplomatic mission. Heavy fighting is up here. This is over by Bilorivka and Kremena here in the Luhansk area. So here in the Luhansk Oblast, we're seeing some fighting. It appears to be over here in the woods. Take a look at this. So this is reportedly they're ambushing a Russian vehicle on the outside of Crimea.
Стоп, стрельба! Ебаш! Добивай! Серега! Серега! Здорово, крей! Вперед! 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 Швидше! Дорогу, дорогу, крий! Швидко забрали відход! Бігом! Фланг забирай, Серега! Серега, крий дорогу! Один! Крой, крой, крой! Горить, горить, Валя! Обережно, Валя! Отход! Коридор! 3 хвилини! 3 хвилини контакт!
So yeah, sorry, the cat appears to be underneath my desk. Hi, how you doing? So yeah, this is like Giga Chat or some shit in the mic. Yeah, well, they do a lot of voice changing. This is just because of operational security. They don't want necessarily, because there's still, you got to think, a lot of these guys, they have their families in areas that are either occupied or could possibly be occupied, and you don't want anything that could disclose your identity. That's why they're washing out their faces. You know, you can't see their faces, and this is why so many people, why sometimes it's so difficult to find somebody from Ukraine to be able to talk to, because they are extremely, they put themselves in a lot of danger to talk to somebody. It's just, it's a dangerous situation. Anything can still happen. The war isn't over. And so there's still a lot of risk there. And they really don't want to put themselves or their families or anyone at risk. And kind of release their identity. And you see that too in other places too. So that's the thing. So just be mindful of that. They are going to do some of that stuff. It doesn't make it any less authentic. It just means that they're being smart about what they're doing. As we can jump down here, Mykolaiv has been shelled. It's right now, it's suspected this is along a Russian axis of advance coming in alignment. However, recent offensive operations seem to be putting that well out of reach for the Russian Federation. Nonetheless, they continue to shell here. Right now, they're reporting that they were reportedly trying to shell a Ukrainian ammunition depot here in the city of Mykolaiv. However, these shells were just landing inside of civilian areas. Just take a look.
Пиздец. Ёбаный в рот, блядь! Пиздец.
Yep, that looks like an ammunition depot, right? Looks like nuclear's living in North Korea over there. Kramatorsk is also hit. In fact, it was a prenatal medical center, which means prenatal means that it's like a maternity hospital, essentially. It's like women, pregnant women go here. This was a prenatal medical center in Kramatorsk, which was hit by shelling. It damaged the facility and completely destroyed its reception wing. And it's coming from Pavel Krylenko, who's the head of the Donetsk Regional Military Administration. Luckily, no casualties at this point have been reported, so we're not aware of any casualties. But Russian rockets didn't end up hitting this prenatal facility. And so as we continue here, we of course get our daily Donetsk update. Quote, Russian aggressors fired missiles in the Donetsk region on September the 11th. 3 people were killed and 8 citizens were injured. Once again, coming from Pavel Krylenko. We do see that update once again here. Bakhmut was also shelled. In fact, children were being evacuated by members of the emergency services and Ukrainian police officers here out of Bakhmut as intense shelling rocked the city. Take a look.
Йдемо на евакуацію. За попередньою інформацією зателефонувала до поліції жінка. Вона з 3 дітьми мешкає в районі Бахмута, який дуже сильно обстрілюється ворожими військами. Вона попросила допомоги, щоб ми її вивезли разом з діточками та евакуювали в більш безпечне місце.
Здравствуйте.
Проходите, садитесь, он там поможет.
Крыша побила, потолок обвалился, стекла все повылетали.
Давайте, залазим, садимся на сиденье. Давай, мужик. Все, не переживайте, довезем, все будет нормально. Все, так, вам удобно? Вы в подвале постоянно были, да?
Ну, периодически, да. А вчера вообще целый день в подвале. У нас изнутри посыпался. Стенки поотходили.
Так это вы на улицу уже сколько так вот не выходили, чтобы пройтись?
230.
Of course, you can see that opening bombardment. I mean, it's just an immense amount of firepower being brought down upon Bakhmut, Soledar, Toretsk, and this entire area as Russia continues to conduct offensive operations despite being completely bogged down in most cases. Let's jump down here and into the south. What we're seeing, well, actually, before I move on, there was one more thing coming out of Luhansk Oblast, and that's because more surprises are to be announced soon. That's coming from the head of the Luhansk Oblast, Sergei Haida, who's he says that several settlements in Luhansk Oblast are already under Ukrainian control, but he cannot name them at this time. So there are apparently several big developments happening in Luhansk Oblast. As we continue down here into Avdiivka. Avdiivka is ablaze. It's continued to be shelled and fought over between Ukrainian and Russian forces for quite some time now. Avdiivka is Ukrainian held, and it is being heavily shelled by Russian forces here in this area, as it currently is putting pressure onto the northwestern flank of Donetsk, which is the capital of the Donetsk Oblast, but also is an extremely strategically important city, and it has many railheads, has many warehouses, a lot of equipment, a lot of troops, and obviously its large population. So right now they're trying to push Ukrainian forces away from the city itself to relieve some of that pressure. We saw that over here in Pisky, which still has fighting ongoing. We're seeing that here too in Avdiivka, where Ukrainian troops are even better entrenched in their positions. Just take a look.
Это пердец.
We also see quite a few. We also see quite a lot of Russian troop movements here over in Makivka, which is on the opposite side of Avdiivka. We see over here in Makivka where Russian forces were spotted there in the city moving troops and supplies. So we're not quite sure what this is, but at this point, Russian forces are currently kind of on the back foot, and even the leader of the self-declared Donetsk People's Republic, Pishlin, reportedly fled to Russia after releasing a statement in a moving vehicle where he said that there were issues along the border of the Republic. So as you can see, quite a bit of military equipment being moved. Now, if you don't have troops to crew those, then it doesn't really help. Delta Aviation asked, is Ukraine using captured vehicles for parts? Most certainly. So Ukraine is definitely using destroyed and damaged vehicles that are damaged beyond repair for parts. We even saw that in some instances where they were stripping some of their own vehicles that had been put out of commission, stripped all really the useful parts out of it that they could, and then just left them piled, and the Russians ended up finding them. And then like one of them turned over out of about 8 that they had. They were all BTRs. We know that they're probably doing that with many other different vehicles, anything that could be salvaged, really. A lot of these vehicles, however, are pretty destroyed beyond any kind of salvageability by the time they get them. But anything that they can use, they're going to use it. There's actually a term for that. It's called TSE. It stands for Tactical Site Exploitation, and that means that once you take over a location, you actually get any of the equipment you possibly can that can be used by you that once belonged to your enemy. It's called Tactical Site Exploitation, and that's part of what you do when you're getting like intel from that kind of stuff. But you exploit whatever materials you can find at the site. If you are out of grenades after assaulting a position and you find some of their grenades and you know how to use them, well, guess what? You suddenly have yourself some grenades. Need a mortar to support your next little assault, and you have an 82 millimeter mortar next to you? Well, congratulations! Now you can drop mortar rounds on your enemy's positions as long as you know how to use it. That's an actual term. It's something that they actually teach you. There's so I was in a CAT platoon, which stands for a Combined Anti-Armor Team, and we're a mobile unit, meaning that we ran around in like Humvees and MRAPs and MATVs and stuff like that. We had like gun trucks, like 50 cals and Mark 19s and 240 gun trucks and what have you. And then you also had like the Saber trucks, which is the tow missile launcher systems and whatnot. That's kind of what I did. That's what I did. And then sometimes you rolled with mortars too. But inside the back of the vehicles, you have like an LZ landing kit. We'll take empty ammo cans and we'll fill them with like an LZ landing kit, and you'll have like an IR, like you'll put like if you have an IR strobe light, you put it in there. You take like you put like some IR chem lights, and you'll be able to like use it on a rope, and you'll be able to twirl it so aircraft can see you. It's like an LZ marking thing, smokes, whatever. And then you also have a TSE, a Tactical Site Exploitation Kit in the back. You have an EPW, Enemy Prisoner of War Kit, so that way you can take prisoners of war if need be. And you have extra med kits and everything in the back. But this actually, you actually have stuff to like set up for that purpose. So yeah, that's how that works. But yeah, there's an actual term for that, and they certainly are. The most certainly, especially because they use very similar equipment, if not exactly the same equipment. They're cannibalizing anything they can to make sure that their stuff is good. And every logistical truck used, guess what? They can transport more. Everyone knows how to drive, right? So, I mean, they can, and it doesn't take a whole lot to teach someone how to drive. They are certainly using those logistical trucks to their advantage. They're using the armored vehicles to their advantage. Oh, ours was damaged? Great. Here's a new one. Go. Swap your kits, go. And they have, and the ammunition. They've captured so much ammunition, so many anti-tank guns, so many artillery guns, so much equipment. It is ridiculous. It is just insane. They have actually more equipment coming from the counteroffensive areas than they actually know what to do with. There is just so much equipment, they do not know what to do with it. They don't have enough people trained to use these vehicles to actually use them all. That's how many T-72s and T-80s and T-90s they have captured, and how many BMPs they have captured, and BMDs. There's just not enough people trained on how to gun these things and how to operate these things effectively to crew them all. And that's just captured stuff. I mean, that's, man, you gotta wonder, like, it's actually was questioned much earlier on, and I'm sure it's especially true now. Reportedly, at the beginning of the Donbass campaign, Ukraine was fielding more armored vehicles than Russia was. And now, think about it. They have more vehicles now than they did then, and it was a possibility that Ukraine was fielding more armored vehicles than Russia was. Now, it's almost certainly true that they are fielding more armored vehicles on the front lines than Russia is. Now, however long that maintains is a question, but Russia continues to just throw equipment into the fight, older and older progressively, and it's not working out in their favor. They are not doing very well, and they have a manpower shortage, and they don't have enough troops trained either on T-72s to operate these effectively. There's panic going throughout the Donetsk Oblast as, of course, Pishlin left. Pro-Russian supporters are reportedly beginning to flee the area, as the panic has led to fuel and cash shortages throughout the region. It just blows my mind how many Ladas you still see. like these are all, like, you know, like, you have, like, your cars are, like, from the mid 2000s and stuff, right? Like, you got your, like, modern cars and stuff, and you have all of these cars are from, like, the 90s. Like, most of the cars in this lineup are older than I am. I mean, that's not saying much, but I mean, they're older than I am. It's not just pro-Russians, it also includes those who are scared they'll be caught in the middle. You know, there's a lot of questions about reprisals, and I know they happen, and I know they happen on both sides. But you know, I'm not, there's a scale to these things, and we're not really seeing any like mass reprisal out of anywhere. I mean, even areas that have been in like firmly in separatist hands for some time, we're not seeing any reprisals out of these areas. Most of the time, so the SBU actually releases every single day, you know, when they're capturing people. And, you know, we're just not seeing the reprisals out of these areas that were held in any way. See if I can find it for you. Defense Intelligence, Ukrainian Security Services. Here we go. So like I said, the Ukrainians, they release every day when they're capturing, you know, like SBU detained a traitor who is preparing a list of potential targets for the Russian Federation among top Ukrainian officials from the special services and law enforcement. And every day, like, they're releasing where these guys are from, and it's not really occupied region. It's not really areas that have been occupied. Yeah, like a special operation in Odessa. Like, Odessa's been firmly in Ukrainian hands. You know, the same thing here. Tar arsenal, Russian ammunition. And we see that pretty much over and over and over again as they're going through here. PR Russian Federation. And that's in Kyiv. See? A bot farm in Kyiv. Let's see. Pro-Kremlin. Tveria. Let's see where this guy came from. And the Kremlin propaganda. The Kievorod region. Kiev. So it's coming out of Kyiv. But you see what I mean? Like, this is all from the actual this is coming technically from the SSU. So, like, it's all... we don't see anything out of any of these border regions or any liberated regions, really. So, I don't... There's not really a reason to be afraid. I understand why, because that's probably not getting to them, but from at least my side of things, I'm not seeing enough of a reprisal kind of mentality out of the Ukrainian forces in a large number to really say that's a possibility. They're pretty good. They also don't filtrate people. I think that's also a good example of there's no filtration camps if you're in Ukraine, if you're on the Ukrainian side. According to operator Starsky, Belgorod electricity comes from Kharkiv. Why is that? It's the link up of grids. So pretty much everywhere is interconnected with everywhere else. We're a very globalized society. For instance, Afghanistan, 85 to 90% of their electricity comes from Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan, which is why the Islamic State continually blows up stuff here. So it's quite a bit. Yeah, and so Nuclear says, I do agree with you, but it doesn't stop them from being scared. Oh, I know. That's what I was just saying. I was like, they're probably not getting that because they are in occupied areas, but, there's just not, and there's also not any, Russian rhetoric to lead anyone to believe that. But I understand people being scared, but we're also not seeing people flee to Russia very often in mass quantities. They're usually forced. Come down here to Mariupol where no food, no problem. But here's a statue of Alexander Nevsky. Food for thought, I guess. So, there you go. Mariupol, you don't need food. Here's a statue. Great conquerors. Did they fuck his face up? No, they didn't. Xenocide. They just blur out people's faces. Trend standards in Ukraine, however, as you saw with sanitation there in the Russian trenches. Ukrainian trenches, the standards of living continue to raise. They have a TV. This is in a dugout in a trench. They have a TV. They're just sitting there watching movies, chilling. Hell yeah. These guys know how to fight a war. Let me tell you what. These guys know how to fight a war. You think I ever had shit like this? Hell no. These guys know how to fight a war. They know what life's like. They have good-ass food. They ain't eating rations. Have you seen how many cooking videos Ukrainians have had? There's so many frontline cooking videos out there. Please, go watch one. I didn't have a TV. I didn't have... Hell no. These guys know how to fight a war. This is this is fantastic frontline living. I have never been in a trench. I've never seen a trench so sophisticated. They just have a TV packed in there. He's watching Monday Night Football on his television. Are you kidding? In his trench, in his dugout. This guy doesn't even have a real floor. He has literally dug this into the ground. This is dirt. But by God, this man has a TV. He's got a stove over here. He's chilling in his nice, comfy cot. He doesn't have an actual cot. No, that's a mattress. You gotta go. Look at all these spices. Look at all this hygiene stuff up here. And spices, right? He's got his coat hung. They even got a little windbreaker on the doors so it doesn't get cold. A generator. My God. This guy's living a high life. How on earth did they get it to work? I don't know. Because we got ingenuitive, right? We've gotten ingenuitive before. Like, I've done some ingenuitive stuff myself, but not like that ingenuitive. Hey, just because you're in the trenches doesn't mean you can't watch the new football game. I know, right? It's thanks to Starlink, 100%. Fantastic. But yeah, that's fantastic. That is high life living if you're on the front lines. This is some German trench like shit. Yeah, it is. It really is. This is, for those that don't know, the German trenches in World War I are insane. Like, compared to everyone else, their trench lines are insane. Even the walls are straight there. Yeah, I know. They've really put some work into their trenches, and it shows. Over here in Nikopol. Nikopol was shelled by Russian forces. They continued to shell it with rather heavy artillery bombardment. Just listen. And as we've seen time and time again, most of the time that comes from the areas around Enerhadar and Vyadane over by the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. And before we hit Kherson, there's been a little news. So this is right around this general area, just to give you an idea. It's in a field somewhere. But it would appear that a Russian Su-25 crashed upon takeoff down here in Crimea. So the Russian Su-25 Frogfoot was taking off from a Russian airbase here near kind of Krasnolinsky, and Crimea, and crashed immediately upon takeoff. From the footage, it appears the aircraft turned while still at a very low airspeed, and it got caught up into the lead flight aircraft's jet wash, which then put it into an uncontrollable dive and spin, and it would appear, and there's no evidence that the pilot was able to eject.
Ёб твою мать!
Huh. Your fancy takeoff didn't work, huh? As we continue up here and into the Kherson Oblast, liberations are continuing throughout the Kherson Oblast. And it says that, quote, as of September the 12th, the armed forces of Ukraine liberated the settlements of Vyskopilya, Novovozhenskia, Bilorivka, Suhi Stovok, and Myrobolivka here in the Kherson region. That's coming from Natalia Humenik, who is the head of the United Coordinated Press Center of the Defense Forces of the South of Ukraine. When we were finding this, I said this and I will say it again. They need to acronym the hell out of this title. The head of the United Coordinated Press Center of the Defense Forces of the South of Ukraine. Can we shorten that at all? Could we like acronym it? Right? Like the HUCPC of the Defense Forces of the South of Ukraine or something? Because man, that is a long title. That's a mouthful, Natalia. But it is kind of nice that we're seeing some liberations here. So we're seeing that over here. Some of these we already knew. They have been taken. Vyskopilya, Novorosensky, over here. This is a little bit of a newer one. We actually had this one marked as being in Ukrainian held or Russian held territory. This one is one of the newer ones which they have captured, which is Myrobolivka. So we're seeing quite a few successes here throughout, and this is Suki Stovok here. So we're seeing quite a few successes here in the Kherson Oblast. And it would appear that Ukrainian forces are attempting to get Russian forces to surrender. There's been a lot of talk of today about Russian forces in the Kherson Oblast surrendering. Here, Ukrainian forces are seen using loudspeakers to get the Russian forces to surrender to Ukrainian troops. And this comes amidst, of course, the major recent losses that Russian forces have taken, both here in Kherson and even more so in the Kharkiv Oblast. But there are rumors right now that, and this is rumors that are populating from the Ukrainian forces themselves, that the Russian forces are currently talking and having negotiations for a complete surrender of all Russian forces within the Kherson Oblast. This cannot be confirmed independently at this time, but there's very good evidence to show that at this point, that the Russians may indeed be surrendering. The fighting has calmed down a little bit. I wouldn't say it significantly, but I would say a little bit. But as you can see here, they're still trying to get them to surrender in multiple other ways too. We do know that there have been pamphlets that have been fired over areas prior to shelling. So that way, and they have literally little cards being passed out, little business cards for surrendering and all sorts. Yes, there's quite an immense amount of, it seems to be a lot of immense amount of pressure of just getting these guys just to surrender at this point. And it seems that it may be working. Especially when you combine that with the recent losses and the morale destruction that there is here. But take a look. Trying to get the Russians there to surrender. Successful strikes throughout the Kherson Oblast. Quote, the armed forces of Ukraine destroyed 3 Russian 152mm self-propelled howitzers EST and an ammunition depot in Novokakhovka in the Kherson region on September the 11th. And that's coming from Operational Command South. That certainly backs what we were seeing yesterday out of Novokakhovka when we saw an ammunition depot that was currently on fire and was having sympathetic detonations. Oleksandrivka over here was liberated. This is Primor at Oleksandrivka. Quote, our general staff, as I was told, seems to have already recognized that it is already ours, said the advisor of the office of the president of Ukraine, Aristovich, in regards to Oleksandrivka. And Odessa. Quote, 9 more grain ships have left Odessa. On September the 12th, 9 more ships with Ukrainian agricultural products left the ports of Odessa through the grain corridor. And that's coming from the official Twitter account of the Turkish Ministry of National Defense. And we certainly know that 1 more ship has arrived inside a port. And I actually downloaded a couple things today. First of all, I got Flight Tracker 24. I've used it before, but I got it downloaded to my phone. And I also have one that I can... I have another one that I've been tracking the transponders of all of the ships putting in to port here in Ukraine. And one did show up today that I was tracking that is indeed going to be going to Ethiopia. So one of those is going to be taking 30,000 metric tons of wheat. They're loading up there in Odessa, and it's going to Ethiopia. And as we continue down... But that's actually it throughout the entirety of the country of Ukraine. But that doesn't mean that's everything. There's certainly quite a bit of international news too. A lot of it having to do with Ukraine and the war and Russia and everything else ongoing. But as we jump over here, we actually end up right on the border region between Kharkiv and Belgorod. And that's because 2 villages bordering Ukraine were ordered to evacuate. The governor of the Belgorod region called on residents of the villages of Zuravilivka and Nikotivka to evacuate. It was reported that by Russian mass media, we may be seeing a false flag event in these areas too. Yes, I will be talking about Armenia, Delta. And so as we continue here, we jump up here and into the areas around, say, St. Petersburg. And what we're seeing is that interesting pamphlets were found at a women's fertility clinic. And so it says, unexpected baby you can't afford, send your husband to the front. I seem to be having technical issues. Hold on, guys. Okay, how about now? Do you guys hear me a little bit better now? Can you guys hear me any better? Yes? No? Chat? Correction, doesn't say that. Sarcasm. Sorry, Farah's our interpreter. So yeah, it's kind of interesting, yeah. But yes, it doesn't say that. Thanks, Farah. Thanks for explaining that. Yeah, I don't read or speak Russian or Ukrainian. I'm sorry if you're having issues. I'm not seeing any issues with my OBS or anything. So I apologize, guys. But as we continue, nonetheless, as we continue on our endeavors, what we end up seeing is more calls for Russian forces to resign, or for President Putin to resign. So deputies of 18 districts of Moscow and St. Petersburg have signed a statement demanding that Putin resign. They will probably be charged with treason. And Russian TV is calling for more war crimes. Russia Today's editor-in-chief Margarita Simonyan outraged by why Russia isn't committing war crimes at this point. Take a look.
А на Украине, на оставшейся, на неосвобожденной, нет гражданской инфраструктуры? Нету. Там нет ЛЭПов, АЭС там еще есть, правда? Узлы, ну много разной всякой инфраструктуры, которая, в принципе, может вывести из строя функционирование этого враждебного нам государства, оставшегося, да, очень быстро, легко и надолго, ему будет уже не до этого. И меня спрашивают, и не только меня, всех ребят спрашивают, а мы почему этого не делаем? Ну, нет ответа. Наверное, сейчас настало время, когда или надо это делать, или объяснить, почему нет. Чтобы люди понимали. Я вот не понимаю, я не знаю, ты понимаешь или нет? И вот здесь
мы давно к этому призываем. По-моему, пора уже жестить. Вот просто пора жестить.
Или пора жестить, или пора получить ответы на эти вопросы, которые волнуют общество, которые общество удовлетворят.
Можно впадать в истерику, требовать, давайте устроим блэкаут на Украине. А вы подумали над тем, что к чему приведет этот блэкаут? У нас там появится больше друзей? Когда там не будет холодно, голодно, не работает водопровод.
Нужны там друзья?
У нас там соотечественники.
У нас там соотечественники, ну давайте мы сначала их освободим от нацизма,
да,
а потом обогреем и накормим.
Про Украину. Я считаю, что они в большинстве своем, не говоря о власти, уже украинской, находятся на стороне Соединенных Штатов. В этом смысле они не часть украинского народа, о котором мы говорим, что мы с ним один народ. И вот это тоже нужно понимать. Да, потому что те, кто служат Соединенным Штатам там за деньги, за корысть, за еще что-то, и соучаствуют в американской цели нашего уничтожения, не являются частью одного с нами народа. И не могут являться.
Yeah, why don't we just strike nuclear power plants? Well, there's a lot of reasons there, there, Margarita. There's a lot of reasons there, Margarita, why we wouldn't strike nuclear power plants. There's a lot of reasons why the United States wouldn't strike a nuclear power plant. Infrastructure target? Yeah. Within reason. Like, within reason. It's not like Iraq had a bunch of didn't have fucking nuclear power plants. Like, we didn't bomb Iraq's nuclear power plants. Like, they didn't have any. We didn't have to worry about that problem. Like, yeah, we don't have to worry about that. Yeah, they have nuclear power plants. Why won't we just blow them up? Are you stupid? What? Oh, yeah, that's right. Your government doesn't teach you about Chernobyl because they tried to cover that up. Yeah, by the way, Chernobyl was a thing. A lot of people died of cancer, if not just radiation poisoning on the outright, and there are entire swaths of Europe and Belarus that you can't go into because it's so highly radioactive, it still kills people to this day that are dumb enough to dig trenches into them. Yeah, there's a good reason not to strike power plants, including the largest one in Europe, the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. But with that draws a close to Europe and all the insanity happening between Ukraine and Russia. However, the insanity continues elsewhere as well as we move over here to Armenia and Azerbaijan. Over the last 24 hours, significant amounts of fighting have taken place as heavy fighting has broken out between the two nations, which were recently just attempting to make peace between each other. Large clashes broke out between Armenian and Azerbaijani forces tonight. Shots are being heard from Vardenis, ShamRocks, Goris, and Tatev, all along the border, not just in contested Artsakh regions. And these are where reportedly the hotspots are being found at. And there are reported deaths on both sides. This is Azerbaijani rocket fire towards Armenia.
Законի ջերմքի վրան է։ Ոնց է խփում, որովհետև դե քաղաքի մեջ են խփում։
Azerbaijan is blaming a provocation by Armenia. Subversive groups of the armed forces of Armenia in the dark of the day bind the areas between the positions of the troops of Azerbaijani army and the supply roads in different directions, using the mountainous topography of the area. They used as a result of urgent measures taken by our units to immediately prevent these acts, a battle ensued. The Armenian president held an emergency call with Putin. The Prime Minister provided details about the provocation, aggressive actions of the Azerbaijani armed forces against the sovereign territory of Armenia, which began at midnight, which were accompanied by shelling from artillery and large caliber firearms. Oh, wait. Gotta keep expanding those sources, folks. So this is coming from the Armenian Defense Ministry. As a result of Azerbaijani aggressions, Armenian side has losses and wounded. Our Azerbaijani side also targeting civilian infrastructure. The armed forces of Armenia fulfills their set of tasks. You see there.
13-ին կեսգիշերն անց Ադրբեջանի զինված ուժերի ստորաբաժանումները հրետանային միջոցների, ականանետերի ու ԱԹՍ-ների կիրառմամբ ինտենսիվ կրակ են բացել հայ-ադրբեջանական սահմանի միանգամից մի քանի հատվածում տեղակայված հայկական դիրքերի ուղղությամբ։ Մասնավորապես հրետակոծման են ենթարկվել Սոտքի, Վարդենիսի, Գորիսի, Կապանի, Արտանիշի եւ Իշխանասարի ուղղությամբ տեղակայված դիրքերը։ Հարվածներ են հասցվում նաեւ քաղաքացիական ենթակառուցվածքներին։ Հայաստանի Հանրապետության զինված ուժերի ստորաբաժանումներն ամբողջ ծավալով կատարում են իրենց առջև դրված մարտական խնդիրները։
And so he's just going through the situation there in Azerbaijan and Armenia. So they have requested immediate military assistance from the CSTO. A number of post-Soviet states are part of the alliance, including Russia, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, and Belarus, while with Serbia being an observing member. So they are requesting immediate military support from other nations at this point. Oh, I missed one thing in Europe. Kind of. We'll get to that after China. So search efforts continue for 25 missing individuals. On September the 12th, authorities said the death toll rose to 93 as the search for survivors continues here in Sichuan province of China. The earthquake also affected Chengdu, the provincial capital, where residents were under strict zero COVID-19 controls, meaning they were not allowed to leave their buildings. Sichuan province has also endured its worst heat wave in the last 60 years this summer. This is coming from CDP. This is as well as China's Xinhua News. Back up here in Russia. So, off of Ruski Island in the Sea of Japan, a Russian oligarch was found dead. So, the managing director of the Far East and Arctic Development Corporation's aviation industry, Ivan Pechorin, was found dead on Ruski Island. Pechorin, in a state of alcoholic intoxication, fell overboard and drowned. The company's previous CEO died in February of this year. They seem to be going through a lot of oligarchs and CEOs in Russia lately. Last one fell out of a window at his hospital. And another one shot himself in the head the day after the invasion started. Update regarding the situation there in Papua New Guinea. 7 dead and 24 injured in the wake of the 7.6 magnitude earthquake. Collaboration with the Papua New Guinea Disaster Management Team, or DMT, reported 7 deaths and 24 injuries in the 7.6 earthquake that struck Papua New Guinea. 389 houses collapsed in the Madang town. DMT reported moderate to heavy damages to dwellings made of light materials and minor to moderate structural damages onto multi-story buildings in communities around the epicenter and as far away as Morobe, provincial capital of Leh, and Goroka, Eastern Highlands, about 120 kilometers from the epicenter. Landslides have been reported in Bulolo, Wau, and Boana. And the regional power grid, internet cables, roads, and highways have been damaged. No reports were yet available from towns close to the epicenter, including Rai Coast, Usino, Bundi, and other rural areas in the Madang province due to damages caused by the earthquake. Coming from the United Nations and Papua New Guinea. And once again, Relief Web. As you jump over here, over into Yemen, multiple soldiers were killed in an Al-Qaeda counterattack. At least 3 Yemeni soldiers were killed and 6 more wounded, including a field military leader, when Al-Qaeda militants detonated improvised explosive devices, or IEDs. These attacks are a bid to halt Yemeni military advances to the militant strongholds. Over the past 3 days, the military has gained control of a large swath of land in Abiyan, including 3 valleys that each house Al-Qaeda training facilities. That guy's very lucky to be alive. That's a very small IED, though. To be fair, that is a relatively small IED. They said 3 soldiers were killed and 6 more were wounded. That makes sense, but that's a relatively small IED. So it's very impressive that more weren't killed in that blast. It was probably like maybe 100-pounder, maybe. So unknown militants attacked a provincial senator. Attacked a provincial senator's entourage here in Nijikoko, Nigeria. 5 people were killed in the attack in Anambra province. The incident took place last night in Nijikoko district, and the provincial senator's convoy was passing at the time. The militants fired at the cars of the official and his entourage. The victims of the attack were police officers and deputy senators. The politician himself survived the assassination attempt. No one yet has taken responsibility. And our last bit of news for the night ends on a little bit of a high note, but we don't have any like purple points for you guys tonight as we look forward to. But there is an update regarding Artemis 1. Artemis 1 flight test around the moon will launch no earlier than September the 27th, with a backup opportunity of October the 2nd under review. The updated dates represent careful consideration of multiple logistical topics, including the additional value of having more time to prepare for the cryogenic demonstration test, and subsequently more time to prepare for the launch overall. We're getting this directly from NASA. There is the Artemis 1 rocket system there. Fantastic. We're going to get to see that go to the moon eventually. And here is blogs from nasa.gov regarding their Artemis mission. So, hopefully, we will be able to effectively report on that. We'll have to see. But hopefully we'll be able to report on that. Hopefully we finally get to see Artemis 1 go into space. I'm really looking forward to that. It's a huge point in human history. A lot of people don't realize how important in a time that we live right now. Going to the moon again and setting up a moon base, which is what the Artemis 1 missions are going to accomplish overall by the end of their mission sets, is huge. It's quite a huge feat. It's the beginning of a new age in human history. The age in which human beings expanded themselves past Earth. We've landed on the moon, but we haven't stayed there. And they're going to be putting a moon base there, a lunar base onto the moon, where humans will stay, and we'll be able to build up from there, test many things for Mars missions. But this is really the beginning of an era of human history. We live at the point in human history where we those science fiction topics of going and expanding past our own planet and going out to ensure the survival of humanity should something happen to our planet is really starting to happen. That's a reality now. That is what is happening right now with the Artemis missions. It's quite the experience. It's insane to think about that's where we live in human history, as well as such a huge shift in many different things geopolitically, so many ongoing conflicts. A lot of things are happening. It's such a huge shift in climate change. There's a lot of bad things. There's a lot of good things. But overall, hopefully we will see things move on towards a better, more peaceful and prosperous world and species. I mean, I hope that we continue to become more prosperous and more beneficial as a species. And with that, that's actually all of the news for tonight, guys. I hope that you guys have enjoyed the new Monday streams. I hope that you guys not necessarily enjoy the news, but at least found it knowledgeable. If you're enjoying the content, please feel free to give us a like and subscribe. It really helps us out here on the channel. And the more people that are here, the more of an impact we're going to have on things like fundraisers and charities. So I hope that you guys do continue to show us that support. You guys have been awesome thus far. I cannot thank you guys enough, and hopefully we continue to kind of grow this awesome project and this awesome community where we are the news that gives back. And with that actually works with you guys, and that's how we give back. If you check out in the video description below, you're going to see a ton of different links for organizations. Please go and check all of those organizations out. They are quite amazing. They do a lot of great work, and all of it is to help people. We're never doing super chats on this channel. We're never pushing merchandising. We're never trying to monetize this thing to make any money off of it. 100% of everything we do is for charity and will always be for charity. So thank you very much for supporting those endeavors. Remember, if you can't give a lot to these organizations, give a little. If you can't give anything at all, that's okay too. Just please help us grow this. The more people that are here, the more of an impact we will have. So share it amongst your friends, like, subscribe, and you can follow us on Twitter, on Facebook, and share our stuff on there too. We will not be streaming tomorrow, so we will see you back once again on Wednesday, coming at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, 9 p.m. Central. In the meantime, I hope that you guys have a fantastic Tuesday and Wednesday, and I hope that you guys find a little bit of enjoyment. Please be safe. I hope that you, your family, and your friends are safe, and if not, I hope that you find that safety and security in the very near future. In the meantime, my name is Paul from the New News, and have a fantastic rest of your night, everybody. Bye now.
Going home, Russian soldiers, going home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. І стояно в головах, і чудо кличе, діти нахуй. Тут працює ЗСУ і ТМО. Нам погром. Від стрия до Волновахи чутно клич, ідіть нахуй, тут працює ЗСУ. Going home, Russian soldiers, going home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з погром. Від стрия до Волновахи чутно клич, ідіть нахуй, тут працює ЗСУ. Going home, Russian soldiers, going home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з погром. Від стрия до Волновахи чутно клич, ідіть нахуй, тут працює ЗСУ. Ідіть нахуй.